So let's do a quick little vid, waiting for the bus to Brasilia via a city adjacent to it that I can't pronounce. And just a few thoughts. I was in Santa Catarina, which is the nicest part of Brazil, I'm told, and I don't disagree. I think it's sizably because it's like a German community there, primarily. And in Blumenau and Pomerode, which is the kind of iconic German place where they have like a Brazilian Oktoberfest, it's a very homogenous society, so I wouldn't really call it German anymore. Aesthetically, obviously, people look very European, but with that kind of Portuguese combination, it's created quite a nice balance if you think of what Germans are famed for, which is lack of humour, efficiency, and perhaps the blue eyes and blonde hair. Although I think that's exaggerated. I think the latter is more Scandinavian. Nonetheless, that combined with the kind of Portuguese outlook, I guess, and given that Santa Catarina, although a region further south, it's still quite a tropical climate, it's created a really nice balance. And I have to say there's few places in the world that I've been that I would consider living. And I would say this region is one of them. I wouldn't say the region, actually, I'll take that back a little bit. I would say specifically Blumenau, Pomerode, and probably some of the rural areas, because even when I hit a place called, I'm going to butcher this, Jaraguá, something like this, and then Joinville, it became more mixed, and consequently standards go down. And that's why I've always said multiculturalism doesn't work. It will never work, ever. And that's why it's promoted to create divide, because people are naturally tribalistic. People are tribal, tribalism is what drives us all. And if you want to use science, which I think is nonsense for the most part anyway, it's become a brand that's utilised to sponsor whatever it is the status quo wish to push. Nevertheless, within that sphere, there is, of course, valid experiments, valid undertakings, valid research. And one of them involves babies. You take a baby and you place versions of its mother or father or known family members, those closest to it, but you grade the shade differently for each picture. So you blacken it or whiten it or make it brown or whatever. Babies naturally will always gravitate towards those within their individual tribe, irrespective of if they've even met their parents. Could be adopted, but it's natural. In fact, that's part of the study as well. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with interacting with other people. All I'm saying is successful societies are always societies that share an intrinsic cultural identity, and a stronger form of that is an ethnic identity, and a stronger form of that would be a racial identity. It's just natural. Though that said, of course, you could have a Afro-Caribbean British culture, English is spoken, and you'd have more in common as someone of a different shade, someone that's, I don't know, typically Saxon, and let's say Ukrainian, who would obviously be paler. But I'm saying if you fit the bill on all, then the next level would be the latter. So, for example, if you had two cultures that share the same language, but are different ethnically, let's say, this is where it gets kind of like a mismatch of liberalism. So, two English-speaking Armenian groups. One is like a Greek Orthodox, the other is Russian Orthodox. And you're Russian Orthodox, you're more likely to be adjoined to the Russian Orthodox army. It's the worst analogy I ever could have given. But you catch my point. If boxes are ticks, the next level would be what someone aesthetically looks like, what someone is aesthetically. And all these factors create a glue and a bond. And what I saw in Blumenau is simply a package of all of those things. So in areas of Santa Catarina, it's not just Santa Catarina, I'm just using this as an example because I'm in Brazil, and I really thought the place was fantastic. It was very, it's the kind of place where literally people just leave their doors unlocked, vehicles, cars. In fact, I wasn't even given keys to the place. that I rented. So the doors were open all night, the windows were open all night. In Brazil, think about that, because it really isn't like the rest of Brazil. I've seen these in places like these kinds of scenarios in Kyrgyzstan, which is why I loved it so much. Really homogenous communities where people have just shared value sets, and the imposition of that foreign invader, which is the systematic destruction of cultures as a derivative of an occultist body that governs all and is ingrained into the kind of capitalistic formula, if you will. Not that there's anything really capitalistic as such, because that term is defeatist in that there's only one economic structure that's been around since the dawn of time, and that is that which preys on kind of tribalism, the intrinsic necessity to survival. And survival, often branded as something synonymous with the physical, is in fact, in our day and age, when we don't rely anymore on hunter-gatherer principles or hunting or that kind of stuff, hunter-gatherer principles, foraging, things like that, it's social survival, and that's why they reward people financially for adhering to certain social principles that they artificially inseminate upon society, like transhuman agenda with LGBT and transgenderism and all this kind of crap. That's a form of that. They're preying on the fact that you need to be networking and survive socially in order to provide for yourself and your family. It's no longer about going out and chopping wood and harvesting grain. It's about what picture you put as your logo on Facebook or Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's really nice to be going on a tangent in a society where you see yourself both physically, because of course it is an important factor, and anyone that wants to deny it is just denying it for the sake of social survival, which we're talking about, because it's intrinsic and ingrained and everybody knows it. And again, that's not to say people can't mix. I'm just saying that when you have an unprecedented number of cultures intertwined without any glue to bring them all together, without an identity that shares, then there's absolutely no chance of success. And there's absolutely no examples of multiculturalism working really in today's age on a macro, maybe on micro, because that's the plus of a micro. I think in social anthropology back in the day, one of those bullshit programs they undertook for some capital gain, it was specified, whether this is true or not, but from my own personal experience, having travelled around and seeing where the most successful societies lie, it seems to be valid. They say any society that exceeds around 500 persons is doomed to fail. And that's absolutely the case, because it's like when you read and you write and you think of your day from 9 to 5, there's only so many things that you can fit into your day. Your mind is constantly working. That's of course an unhealthy thing, but that's another matter. But if you have X number of people in a community that you're no longer able to recognise by face, let alone name, then it's just not going to function, is it? A stronger society is one where you know everyone, it creates a stronger bond. So yeah, that's what I think about kind of that area in Santa Catarina where Blumenau is and Pomerode. Really lovely place, really nice. And that's the kind of place I'd like to live in. That's the kind of places I've seen elsewhere, but they're few and far between. And I think if anyone's kind of got the time, got a bit of spare cash, and they want to travel around, and you realise and recognise what is happening in society as a whole, because of course there's no national identities anymore. There never really was. Everything is governed by the same centralised cabal. When you have a financial system, everything is orchestrated by the same pyramid scheme, and it's all compartmentalised, so people don't realise that it's all a network. And it's all governed by a centralised committee of individuals, and that's just the way it is. It's the ultimate pyramid scheme. It's just like every publicly known cult, like Scientology, which is provided to the public to undermine Scientology itself. It's exactly the same principle as every other religious organisation and every other social bond, you could say, because cultism is everywhere. It's just certain cults obviously strive to inseminate an occultist negative on the rest of society, and that's what we see now. But Freemasonry is exactly the same. The Rotary Club is a big one, which you will see in Blumenau. Actually, you see it everywhere in the world. It's a subsidiary of Freemasonry, which is a subsidiary of all kinds of occultist agendas and old religious schools. But yeah, if you want to avoid, to the best of your ability, the kind of city life, the evil that's spreading far and wide as rapidly as possible, you want to find places like that. And yeah, if you have the time, you want to go to Brazil, you want to go to Kyrgyzstan, I recommend going to Karakol, I recommend going to Santa Catarina, or even in Europe you'll find nice little small villages, places in Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, those kinds of areas of the world which are yet to be kind of fully intertwined with the end game agenda. That's kind of where you want to go. So I really recommend doing a little bit of research on it, and it's nice to be able to share this with people. And I really have been reminded of how nice it is to live in so kind of communities which are so homogenous and kind of conjoined and share all similar value sets. It's really, really nice thing. So yeah, all the best.